All right. It is fantasy football time. I'm here with Shane Hallam from Draft Sharks. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm doing good, man. Good to be back on with you, Joey. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. This is the the busy time for fantasy football. Everybody's doing their drafts this week or next week, right?
Yeah, a lot of people maybe this past weekend did them, but this upcoming weekend, Sunday, I think is the biggest day of the year for fantasy drafts. So it's the time if you're ready to go.
It is weird. I hear people doing drafts like in June and July and stuff. It's like, what are you doing? Like there's so much that needs to be done, but some people are really into it.
Yeah, some of these big sites now with like Underdog, they have the contests that run all summer. If you draft early, you could get some steals if you have guys you think are good that no one's talking about that end up, rising up. But for the most part, you're risking injury and all
Yeah.
that. It's actually been, I think, a relatively quiet preseason for like big injuries to big time players, luckily.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's going to be a lot of volatility this week. You have cut down day today. You have who knows what's going on with, let's say Ayuk might get traded or, what's going on. So, uh, it's it is volatile. So that's very interesting. Um, what have you seen any trends so far this year that are different from other years, or is this kind of the same as recently?
I think we've been heading this direction, but we're definitely heading in a more wide receiver heavy direction. Now, your home leagues, I think you're still going to go running back early, right? Kind of the old philosophy. But especially if you have any type of points for reception, even half a point for a reception, the wide receivers are just so abundant, but score so many points, So I think I'm seeing leagues where I don't know, 3 years ago, I mean, Christian McCaffrey would have been the 101 every single league, no matter what. And he still is going there a lot. But I've seen, CD Lamb now that he got signed, Tyreek Hill, I mean, these guys are explosive and can put up these huge games. So when we look at the first round of fantasy drafts, you're going to have Justin Jefferson, you're going to have Jamar Chase, you're going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to at least have those six receivers going in the first, and then A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, more can end up there. So I think wide receivers are getting pushed up with how the league is now, and it's kind of following the trend of the NFL.
Back in the day, I remember it was all running backs,
Oh yeah.
all running backs, and then you got your receivers, and now, yeah, I'm looking at ADP. It's basically six wide receivers and four running backs. That's crazy. Um, what is there any one strategy you use for winning a league? Is there any philosophy you have that you carry, or is it a situation where you see how a draft goes and you adjust accordingly? What do you do?
Yeah, I think you have to be flexible. I mean, that's the first thing. Is you can say, "Oh, I'm going to draft a running back this round, receiver this round, and a quarterback here," and then no one takes a quarterback, and you're like, "Well, I can wait another couple rounds." Or like I said, in a lot of my home leagues, guys from around here in Pittsburgh, I enter the league and running backs start going crazy. I can't be like, "Well, my rankings say I should take four wide receivers first, and then I don't have any running backs and I lose, right? Like that happens a lot. So I used to do that, and I'm terrible in home leagues for that. So I think you just have to be flexible and go with those trends. I think sometimes people get scared. You try to outsmart the room and think, well, everyone's doing this, so I'm going to zag and do this. But a lot of times that's going to leave you weak somewhere. Don't hesitate if there's a run happening and two tight ends go ahead of you, and you're like, man, I need a tight end here because it drops off after this next guy. Take that guy. Don't outsmart yourself. So I think it's important. I think it's really important to make sure that you're flexible. But drafting the best value is ultimately going to win you the league. So especially in the later rounds, I think just drafting with upside in mind. You can always cut guys. Super easy to cut. Most waiver wires are fairly robust in fantasy football. So just swing for the fences. Try to get the next Puka Nacua or Kyron Williams. And if you don't, cut them and get someone else.
That, yeah, it seems like it's about value and it's about risk. I don't remember. Puka Nacua was even being drafted last year. And he just came out of nowhere. So another thing is you got to keep up on the waiver wire, right? You know, the draft is one part, but the waiver wire, you got to keep up with it all year.
Yeah, yeah, it's working at Draft Sharks now. We have a tool that literally you sync your league up. It'll read who's available and be like, "Hey, here's who you should cut. Here's who you should get." We actually look 2 weeks in advance because sometimes people are just thinking about the next week. When 2 weeks from now, maybe there's a guy that could blow up, has a good matchup. You have bye weeks coming up. You need to make that move early to secure that player. So I think that's a strategy you can use too. You got to stay active on the waiver wire, especially kickers, defenses. Those are positions you can drop every week. You don't want to just draft the Eagles defense and they're playing the Packers week one. Like they're probably not going to do well. You could draft the Seahawks who are playing rookie Bo Nix and the Broncos. The next week have rookie Drake May and the Patriots. And there's your first 2 weeks. They're probably going to be a top five defense. So and then cut them and then get somebody else. I think that's important too.
When you see I'm looking at the drafts at some boards, and I see a lot of injuries. I see, Christian McCaffrey has something, Jamar Chase has something, Tyreek Hill. Do you factor those in when you draft? Because I think that affects a lot of people. They get scared by somebody has any type of injuries, like, oh, I gotta avoid them, or is it basically, you go on a case by case basis?
I mean, I think it's a case by case basis, but generally just don't be too scared off. If it's not a season ending injury, I think even this early that there's no one really out there that is done for the year, and so I wouldn't be scared of every football player. If you've watched any of these Netflix, the quarterback documentary or receiver documentary, like they're banged up all year. I mean, they're getting treatment all year, even if they play all year, right? So like everyone's going to be hurt to some extent. So I wouldn't be necessarily scared away. The other thing is you can replace them, right? I'd rather take a better player who starts half the season, but gets me more points per game, and then gets hurt and is out for 6 weeks, than a worse player who's going to play the full season, right? Because I get to replace that better player. James Conner is a great example. James Conner is going to get hurt. He's going to miss games. We've seen it in Pittsburgh, but he was a top 10 running back last year when he was healthy and played. And he's being drafted as an RB3 right now. So draft him, start him. When he gets hurt, you replace him with someone else, someone like Jonathan Brooks for the Panthers. They drafted a rookie in the second round. He tore his ACL last year in college. He's going to miss probably first 4 to 6 weeks. So you draft Connor, you draft Brooks. When Connor gets hurt in 6 weeks, Brooks pops in, and boom, you win your league.
And it's funny, somebody that is really good in September, October could be nothing by the end of the season. And somebody that is absolutely worthless now could be extremely valuable at in the last month of the season. It's crazy. You just have to stay on top of it, right?
Yeah, I think you just have to stay on top of it. And it's why, you're going to have injuries on your roster. You're going to have to work the waiver wire. I think in a lot of, 10-team leagues, you can make the playoffs if you pay enough attention. If you're working the waiver wire enough, even if you draft an awful team, you can sneak your way in the playoffs. At that point, the playoffs, I feel like is kind of more luck based, or it's one and done. So I think it's hard sometimes, even if you have the best team, you can put up a dud week. But that's my goal. My goal is always to make the playoffs. Whatever happens, happens. If you stay active and you use the information that's out there, you can definitely make it.
You never know. You never know. And all the people out there that draft a team and then forget about it or neglect it or whatever, you should go to jail. That's a terrible offense. Pay attention to your league, because I see that all the time in leagues. They just don't care, and then it's an easy win or whatever. It's not fun.
Yeah. I mean, then why are you playing? If you want to do that, there's a lot of best ball leagues out there. I'm in 80, 90 best ball leagues, right? Where I get to draft. I love drafting. It's my favorite part. And then I don't have to worry about it. And then, oh, I forgot about that league. Let me look after the oh, I won, or oh, I got last, right? Like you can do that, and those are fun as well if you just like the drafting part. But it's that weekly kind of grind that ultimately wins you the league.
Is there anyone that you really love this year that you just really want to get no matter what.
Yeah, so I'll say if I don't take a quarterback early, right? If I'm not getting a Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, the player I love this year is rookie Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders. And he is a runner. He won the Heisman, probably the most prolific quarterback rushing season since Lamar Jackson. It's not quite Lamar Jackson, but I think he's pretty close. And the thing with fantasy football and quarterbacks is if you can run, it is a Konami code advantage. You're getting a cheat code right there, right? Because most leagues, you get a point for every 10 yards rushing, but you might only get a point for every 25 or 50 yards passing. So a running quarterback gets you more points, even if they have a terrible week. Anthony Richardson, I don't think anyone looked at his 4 games that he played and thought, wow, this quarterback was great. But the 2 games he was fully healthy for the Colts, Anthony Richardson was a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Jaden Daniels, I think, is going to consistently do that. Washington does not have a good defense. They're going to be behind. He's going to be throwing. He's going to be running. So Jaden Daniels is a player we really like, and I think he's going to absolutely smash and potentially have a top 5 fantasy quarterback season as a rookie.
Interesting. Uh, it is funny that somebody could be a really good fantasy player, but a lousy real life player. Like I'm thinking Justin Fields, when he was with the Bears.
Yeah.
That guy was awesome. He was, running like, ran for 1,000 yards in a season. Bears sucked, but but he was great. It's funny that difference.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, you see people taking a chance. I mean, we know in Pittsburgh, Justin Fields isn't going to start, but you see fantasy drafters taking a chance on him because if he does start, oh boy, like that's a top 10 fantasy quarterback just because Justin Fields is going to run.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anyone that you are staying the hell away from?
Yeah, so probably the biggest name player that I am not drafting is Devontae Adams, wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. One of the most talented wide receivers out there, but he had his highest target number of his career last year with the Raiders, and even with that, the Raiders offense just was not good enough for him to score and be a number one wide receiver. So now they're starting Gardner Minshew. I don't think the Raiders offense is going to be very good. Devontae Adams is hitting that wide receiver age cliff where production starts to go down. So, I always said, I'd rather be get out a year too early than a year too late. Because I think if you draft Devontae Adams in the second round, early third round, and he does have that dip, you're screwed. If he is still really good, you drafted someone else that maybe also is really good. So I'm staying away and drafting, younger wide receivers like Drake London from the Falcons, who I like much more.
He has the double whammy. I think there's a couple factors with wide receivers. One of them is if you have a lousy quarterback or not a great quarterback. I'm thinking of someone like a Justin Jefferson who who knows who is it was it Sam Darnold is going to be his quarterback. If you have a good player but with a lousy quarterback, do you stay away from those wide receivers?
A lot depends on the situation because you can have a lousy quarterback, but you get enough targets that it is worthwhile, right? The problem with having a lousy quarterback and a lousy offense, if you're a receiver or running back, is the offense just isn't scoring a lot of points, so your touchdown odds are lower. So drafting 2 or 3 wide, offensive players from a team that's pretty bad, it is not ideal. So it's why we outside of Devontae Adams, we won't see another Raider drafted in a fantasy draft for a while. Zamir White, their probable running back one, but like even him, he's not very exciting. So I think it's kind of an easy thing, but you can draft better offenses will be better.
The other factor is age with wide receivers. To me, Stephon Diggs, I think is reaching that cliff. Is that someone you'd stay away from?
Yeah, it just the Texans are interesting because they have so many options. We know CJ Stroud's really good, but Nico Collins is the X receiver, which in that type of offense is that's who's going to kind of eat those targets up. in what we see in San Francisco with Brandon Ayuk. Nico Collins is going to do well. We saw Tank Dell, his separation ability is really good. And so now you add Stephon Diggs to the mix. Like, can they really support all three of those? Plus Joe Mixon, who can catch passes. Plus Dalton Schultz is there as a tight end. Someone's not going to do well. At least one player there. And I would bet on Stephon Diggs as that player. I like Nico Collins. I like Tank Dell at value. I mean, CJ Stroud's going to have to put up almost 5,000 yards, I think, to support all the weapons there. With Diggs' age, with him disappearing late last season, I think he's going to have some big games. I think you're going to have a big game and then nothing, and a big game and then nothing. And to me, that's not worth the price tag right now.
Yeah. Plus his attitude, I could see him having a bad attitude about some things, but yeah, it seems like there's a too many cooks in that kitchen. Um, about the quarterbacks, do you want to draft one early or do you want to wait? Because it seems like there's a lot of them that are kind of in the same group. I mean, you have that elite level of Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, maybe Lamar Jackson, but then it's like a lot of them seem to have similar numbers. Do you go early or do you wait?
I think this is when we talk about being flexible. I think you can be flexible. It used to be like this answer would be easy for me 5 years ago was late round quarterback. People are missing out. People aren't taking the rushing into account. We've adjusted. We've gotten a lot smarter. There's a lot of smart people in the fantasy football industry. So I don't mind going early. Like at Draft Sharks, Jalen Hurts is our top quarterback. A lot of people are drafting Allen and Mahomes above him. So I've taken a lot of Jalen Hurts as kind of the third quarterback off the board. And last year that played out. If you drafted a quarterback early, you drafted Josh Allen, you drafted Jalen Hurts, you did pretty well. Both had double-digit touchdowns. So I think it's worthwhile again. And I think if you wait, your options are limited. I mentioned Jaden Daniels before. A Kyler Murray, I think, is in that same mold where I can wait a little bit to take him. Or take two guys. Like if you take an elite quarterback, I don't take a backup. I can pick one up on the waiver wire. But if I wait, then I'll take Caleb Williams. Maybe he is the next God sent, and I'm good. He does what CJ Stroud did, and I'll take a chance on Aaron Rodgers, and maybe he finds the fountain of youth, right? Like you could take two guys and hope one works out, or keep churning and play matchups on the waiver wire.
Do you have a general thought on rookies or is it a case by case basis?
Um,
And
I think rookies used to be undervalued in fantasy. I think people were always scared away, and it was worth the shot. Once again, you can cut them if they stink. But this year, people are adjusting. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going in the second round of fantasy drafts. To me, it's a little rich for a rookie as good as he is and as many targets as he'll get. I'd rather have the Drake Londons of the world. But I like Malik Neighbors for the Giants, who I think is similar talent, but you can get him 3, 4 rounds later, and have that. Um, so that's kind of my thought. I like to take the chance on rookies, especially late. Like I'll take Blake Corum, the backup for the Rams if Kyron Williams gets hurt again. But Draft Sharks, we have the odds of every player to get hurt in the season. Kyron Williams is our highest running back in terms of injury odds. So I'll take his backup, right? And maybe Corum sits on my bench for a while. Maybe I have to cut him, but if he gets in the game, he's going to be good in a high-powered offense. So I'll take those chances late. But generally, my starting lineup, I'll shy away from the rookies.
okay. Um, Anthony Richardson, he just seems so tantalizing, but last year was scary. Do you think he learned his lesson that maybe to avoid injury, or was that kind of a freak thing?
I think maybe it was a little bit of a freak thing. I think there's been some adjustment this off season to maybe try to lessen that injury risk and how you take hits and when to slide and all those things I think play a part in trying to correct those issues. It's easier said than done. But I don't think they're going to limit his rushing at this point. But I think we still see a solid fantasy season out of him because of that rushing upside.
Yeah. So Jalen Hurts, I know he didn't have the greatest football season, but he was he still going to fantasy last year? Because looks like
Yeah.
he is
15 rushing touchdowns is going to make you good for fantasy.
yeah, yeah, no matter what.
So that's all
Uh,
he's had double-digit touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons. It's going to happen again, even though they got brought in Saquon Barkley. Like he was hurt, and I think that was a lot of the ineffectiveness toward the end of the season, which could happen again. But yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, he's our QB1 because I think there's a nice floor that you have with those rushing touchdowns, and if he is healthy, he got great weapons. I mean, he could score out of this world.
that tush push is for him for the Eagles. It was a gift from God. Um, Lamar Jackson is always a great running back, but now they have Derrick Henry. Do you see Jackson taking away touchdowns from Henry, or Henry taking away from touchdowns from Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it depends on your expectations. Like, I think Lamar is going to do Lamar things. They're not going to, um, change that. I do think we see a little more zone option where Lamar can kind of read the defense, and I think it's going to depend on what defenses, what do they want to take away. And my guess is they want to take away Lamar and try to deal with old man Derek, right? Like let's hope. So I think Derrick Henry is going to take some touchdowns from Lamar Jackson. I still think Lamar Jackson's rushing will be up there, but Derrick Henry, might be a little bit underrated if you can get him in the second round. And he's going to be touchdown dependent. I think there's going to be some games where he doesn't score and it's kind of a dud, but you're going to have a couple of those multi touchdown games.
Patrick Mahomes, I'm not sure what kind of season he had last year. It seemed like the Chiefs had a down year offensively. But seems like their offense is going to be really good this year. It looks like they got some better wide receivers. Do you think Mahomes will have a big year?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be solid. He's kind of when we say like, hey, you want a rushing quarterback, he's kind of the guy you don't need that, and he still runs a little bit, but I think having adding Xavier Worthy is going to be huge. Hollywood Brown when he comes back, he might miss a game for his injury. We'll see. Having that speed that they lacked last year, it should be a big help to Mahomes. Um, I think the Chiefs' offense in general is going to be better than it was. Maybe Kelsey gets a little bit less. He's getting older. I still think he's still our tight end one. Even if he at his age, he should perform about 74% of his peak fantasy value, and that would have been the best tight end in fantasy last year. 74% of his best season that he had. So Travis Kelsey will still be fine, but I think Mahomes is going to be better than he was last season, more consistent. And he's so good, he's going to have some of those highs.
Interesting about Kelsey. I mean, that's another one of those players that's like, ooh, when is when's that age cliff going to come? But maybe not. We'll see. But with the tight ends, you have like what, three or four good ones, and then a lot of question marks. When you have such position scarcity as that, do you go for a tight end early, or do you just let people get the good ones and then just hope for something in the later rounds?
Yeah, I like going tight end early this year. I think that's a little bit better. You don't necessarily have to get a Kelsey or a Sam Laporta, but I think that next kind of tier down is fine, right? It depends how your league goes. But we like Mark Andrews a lot. A lot of people forgetting him because he ended last season with an injury. But I mean, he's the red zone touchdown guy. If Derrick Henry's not running it, Mark Andrews is getting the target. Trey McBride for the Cardinals, I think, is going to be close to targets with Marvin Harrison and is getting overlooked. George Kittle's still consistent, especially if they trade Brandon Ayuk. I think Kittle's the one that makes out on a lot of those Ayuk targets. And then after that, I think it falls off a little bit, depending on your league. If you get points for receptions, Evan Ingram in Jacksonville catches a lot of passes, but not a lot of touchdowns. So I like getting one to kind of win the first 4 to 6 tight ends. So I want to be one of the first 4 to 6 teams to take one. If you wait, once again, you could take two. One strategy I've used is take TJ Hawkinson, tight end for the Vikings, who's going to be on IR to start the year, right? He's going to miss first 4 games, maybe 6 games, but he was a top 3 tight end last year before the injury. So I'll wait on him, and if I make the fantasy playoffs, TJ Hawkinson could be a league winner for me.
Yeah, yeah. Um, with the running backs, Bijan Robinson is considered, one of the top guys. Do you think the I mean, I'm guessing he had a good year last year, but it sounds like he's set to explode this year. Was it just a coaching issue? Was it that they had no quarterback? I mean, it sounds like he's really expected to be awesome this year.
Yeah, I mean, I like the new offense. Zach Robinson coming in from the Rams from Sean McVay's offense. Sean McVay's used a lead running back, one guy from Todd Gurley to trying with Darrell Henderson to Kyron Williams. So I think we're going to see a lot of Bijan Robinson, both it rushing and in the passing game. And I think the quarterback upgrade's huge. Whether it's Kirk Cousins obviously going to start the year, even if Michael Penix took him in the top 10, if he has to play, I think it's a much big upgrade over Desmond Ritter. I think it's going to help with more scoring opportunities for them. And honestly, outside of Bijan, I mean, who are the weapons there? Kyle Pitts, Drake London. They signed Darnell Mooney. I'm not really, there's not much else. So I think Bijan Robinson is going to be heavily targeted in the passing game as well as run the football. So I think he's a lock first round fantasy pick, along with Christian McCaffrey, obviously, and Breece Hall from the Jets as the running backs. I would definitely take in the first round.
Is Kyle Pitts someone you stay the hell away from? Because I sure have stay. I'm so tired of him. People saying this is the year, this is the year, he's going to explode, and then he does absolutely nothing.
I know it. Look, I have a lot of dynasty leagues where I've drafted them and have them sitting there, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is it, right? We got to make that change. Um, so yeah, that's I'm taking them if I have to. I'm generally, like I said, I'd rather kind of take a Kittle, or I'm waiting a little longer taking David Njoku from Cleveland. So I haven't ended up with a lot of Kyle Pitts this year. I definitely could see in the new offense with Kirk Cousins, like this could be it. But we've seen a lot of tight ends be able to perform with bad quarterback play, be checkdowns with bad coaching. I'm torn. I think it could go either way, but this is it. Like if he doesn't do it this year, we know it's not the coach, it's not the quarterback. Like this is
Right.
it.
Now or never. I'm in the camp of never. Somehow I stay away from him. Uh, do you believe in handcuffs? If you get like a top running back, do you try to get their backup or whatever in a later round?
Um, Not necessarily. I don't think you have to go out there and target handcuffs. Kind of the general philosophy that the stats back up is to not draft someone else's handcuff, right? Because then there's a chance that you have two usable running backs. You have your guy and he doesn't get hurt, and then the other team's guy does get hurt. Now I got two guys instead of one, right? And so with with the waiver wire being as robust as it is, and if you're willing to churn the waiver wire, you don't need your handcuff, right? You can go pick up guys and try to anticipate other handcuffs or other injuries, and you can make it work if your stud running back gets hurt. So I generally try to draft other people's backup running backs, and it gives you good trade bait potentially, as well as you can have the guy that blows up when the starter goes down.
Are Is the fantasy community down on the Steelers offense? I see Najee Harris like with an ADP like in the 60s or something like that. Like Warren is in the 80s. Um, is it because they're going to be taking away carries from each other, or do people just not like the Steelers offense?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think having both running backs there, no one's super sure how this is going to work out. Jalen Warren was so good in the advanced metrics. I mean, Pro Football Focus, all the grades were well above Najee Harris. So I think there's a lot of people who think, I'd rather kind of lean into that upside, right? If Jalen Warren impresses Arthur Smith and he's like, this is the guy, then a lot of people are taking Warren, even some of the sharper drafts. He's going above before the injury was going above Najee Harris. I think Najee's reliable, but does that win you a fantasy league? Like I don't know if Najee Harris is going to win you a fantasy league. You got to hope for two touchdowns in a game for him to make an impact. He's not a guy I want to start every week anymore, especially with Warren there. So I think that with is the Steelers' offensive line going to be any good? How many points are they going to score with just George Pickens and Pat Fryermuth and Russell Wilson, the quarterback? I think all those factors have pushed those running backs down. They could be a value. I think both could be a value. And I would guess if both are healthy all season, we look at the finishes. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren probably going to finish higher than they're drafted, but that might not necessarily be help you win. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. If the Steelers trade for Brandon Ayuk, do you think that would help the entire offense?
Yeah, look, I think Brandon Ayuk is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL right now, right? And I think a lot of people say, oh, no, 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 and give you a big old list. But I think the stats don't back up how good Ayuk is. Um, so I think if they brought him in and now you have him and Pickens and Freiermuth plus the run game, I think it would be game changing for this offense because teams could not. Their teams are gonna keep that safety back on Pickens. He's a deep pass catcher with a deep pass quarterback in Russ Wilson. Like he's gonna have to be double teams essentially. And with Ayuk, you can't do that probably to either of them. And I think that makes it really tough. So if I was the Steelers, I would keep pushing till this has been done. It's probably worth it if you really want to compete this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I see if they don't get Ayuk, I could see a bad year for Pickens because they're just gonna focus on him and there's not much else. So that's gonna be interesting. Um, about Ayuk and the other people that got that were having holdouts, hold-ins or whatever, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, they basically have been doing nothing for, I mean, for almost the whole summer. Do you think that means they'll get off to a slow start?
No, I don't necessarily think that anymore. I mean, you know, these are players who are veterans staying in the same systems from the year before. If they were in a new team or in a new system, then maybe. But the Bengals promoted within; they're keeping the same offensive system. The Cowboys have kept everything consistent. I think they'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about it. And if there's a slow start for a week or two, it's not going to kill you either. But those guys are so talented that I'm not worried. I'm not worried about it. The new CBA makes it so hard for anyone to actually hold out into the season. It's not worth it for players anymore. That it's almost a non-issue when you hear about these contract issues now.
Right, right. They'll probably all get resolved this week or something. Um, do you look at strength of schedule or bye weeks or any of these other factors when you draft someone? Uh, like for example, Arizona Cardinals, they're expected to have a lousy defense and a good offense. So maybe they'll blow up or something like that. Does that factor anything when you're deciding between drafting one player or another?
Not in the draft. I think people that take too much into account with bye weeks make a mistake, like drafting a worse player because they have a different bye than the players you have. Once again, you're going to work the waiver wire. A player can get hurt by week 5 or 6, like that. Don't worry about all that. Um, I don't worry about bye weeks for sure. And then in terms of strength of schedule, you can look at it now and look at it at the end of the year. It's not going to be close. We can all think we know who's going to be bad on what defense and offense, and then Kirk Cousins gets hurt, and now the Vikings offense isn't good anymore, right? Or so we saw that last year. I mean that could easily happen with Patrick Mahomes gets hurt and the Chiefs offense goes to dust, and that offense look bad is good, and but it's the same thing with corners. Sauce Gardner gets hurt and the Jets defense suddenly isn't very good. So I don't worry too much about it, except when looking at defenses and kickers. I think that's where you look at matchups and you just kind of churn every week to get the best matchups possible there.
Yeah, it's not worth it. There's no defense out there that's good enough that you would draft them early, right? It's you just go by,
Yeah, just wait, wait, wait to
weekly
the end. Like
matchups.
I said, I mean, Seattle Seahawks are my favorite because they have 2 easy weeks. The New Orleans Saints have an easy week 1 matchup, and they're actually a decent defense last year. They're playing the Panthers, so I think you can easily easily just draft the defense. I actually usually draft my kicker now before my defense because I think I'm going to get who I want, and then everyone takes who they think are the best defenses, and I'm just going to play matchups every week.
I'm getting who's the Steeler kicker? Chris Boswell. I'm getting him because I think the Steelers are going to be kicking a lot of field
Well, if you
goals.
like, if you can guess field goals, then that's the way to go. Yeah, I mean that's certainly it.
Yeah. How many leagues are you in?
It depends what you count as a league. So if you include my best ball leagues, my dynasty leagues, my redraft leagues, I do college fantasy football. I do C2C, which is both college and NFL. So you're doing two leagues at once, and the college players move up. Look, I have some even wilder leagues I won't get into, but I'm close to 200 leagues. Now in terms of the ones I actually have to manage, and
Right.
during the season, I can't do. I used to try doing over 100. I can't anymore. Like I have a 1 year old. Like I don't have time. So I'm down to probably about 40 that I have to manage week to week and do waivers, and that's still a pain. Yeah, if I didn't have to do waivers, I'd really love fantasy more, and I'd try to do more best ball so I don't have to.
I'm in like five, and I thought that was too much. Oh my God.
So so try
Have you,
40 1 year and you'll pull your hair out. You'll
yeah,
really
yeah, no thanks. No thanks. I'm good. Have you heard any good fantasy football team names this year?
um oh man, that's a good question. We actually have an article on Draft Sharks with some good fantasy football team names. Um I don't know if there's anything that stands out. My wife is a Swiftie, so she looked up, the best like Taylor Swift team names and hooked both of her. She hates football, but is in two leagues and named it after that. So I know there's a lot of people that are hitting that.
Uh, just someone we are never ever getting Dak together. Okay, that's clever.
There you go. There you go.
Just the two of us. Okay, okay, I could. It, yeah, there's all you need is love, Jordan Love. Okay, I get that. Um, oh yeah, what if you draft what's his face? Who's the player? Swift
There
and
you go.
Jonathan Taylor. There you go, Taylor slash
There's
Swift.
Swift. That's right there.
How can people find you, follow you, and get more of your work?
Yeah, go to draftsharks.com. You can sign up if you want help in your draft. Like, I don't know what to do. It costs the cost of a latte, and you can actually sync your league up to our software. And as your draft goes, we'll update and tell you who to draft at each pick. And you can follow me on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam.
You have rankings and projections and stuff.
We do, and then we actually sync with your league so that our rankings and projections line up with your league settings. And we have a Chrome extension and an app. So if you're in like the live draft room on ESPN, Chrome will have a little sidebar, and we'll read your league as it drafts. So when your turn comes up, we have a list of players. Hey, this is who you should take, and you take those players, and you win your league. It's easy as that.
I'm signing up right now. I desperately need something like that. I just did a mock draft. I'm like, who the hell are they? Like, what the hell do I do? I just see a bunch of people. I don't know that much about these people. That would be perfect. All right. Hey, thanks so much. Uh, this is our semi-annual chat. So I'll probably talk to you early next year.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do it again.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.